Welcome to Extend the Table, a podcast of Extend Cafés. And my name is Bryant Martin. I'm the director here at Extend Cafés and have the privilege of being owner of Sower's Harvest Cafe, one of the founding members of Extend Cafés. And one of our visions with Extend the Table is this, and that is to inspire kingdom cafes. And this is a open podcast for anyone who wants to join us live or listen later. And our desire is to just inspire whether you're a coffee trailer, whether you're a restaurant, a bulk food store, a cafe, a coffee house, you're welcome here to our calls. We're typically are doing these about once a quarter. And we have some big dreams about this podcast, Extend the Table. And over the next year, we're kind of hoping to ramp this up and do more of these interviews in the future here. Today, we are excited to have AJ Rotelle with us. Welcome here, AJ. I met AJ probably 6, 7 years ago. I think AJ, you're 28, right?
I'm 30 actually.
Okay, you look 28.
Yeah, thanks.
um, and how did you stay? How do you keep so young looking, running a big store and being in the retail industry all these years? How'd you stay? What's the secret there to looking so young?
I I'm not sure. There's
Okay,
genetics play a factor in that, but
sure, yeah. So, AJ, I think the first time we met was here at Sowers when you were doing some exploratory work for Shepherd's Cup. You were on the board for that. Shepherd's Cup is up in New York City, as some of you probably know. And that's how I met. And I found AJ to be very wise beyond his years. He knew how to ask good questions, and he was doing an excellent job leading the charge there with the exploratory work for Shepherd's Cup, and that was how we met. And then I was, in fast forward a couple years, we had a Kingdom Cafe forum like in 2019 down east, and his father shared there. I think AJ, you shared as well. I was in your store, September Farms. So if you ever get into Lancaster County, check out September Farms. Neat place, and they make their own cheese and hey, if AJ, if you want to share about that, you may. So AJ has a bachelor's degree in business and grew up working for his family business. He has a very keen interest in seeing cafes used as a way of ministry both locally and around the world. And so, AJ, it's good to have you here. His topic is going to be on, or his title is Cafe Financials 101. So, AJ, I'm going to turn it over to you.
all right, thanks. Yeah, it's exciting to be part of this call. I yeah, I've enjoyed getting to know Bryant over the years, and it's being involved with the Shepherd's Cup startup and getting familiar with more kingdom focused or ministry focused cafes. They're just an exciting thing, and I think a lot of people of our generation enjoy going and meeting friends at cafes, and so they're just um, they're a positive thing in many ways. Um, so yeah, Bryant talked to me earlier this year about giving a talk related to finances in cafes, and um, I feel like I want to start out with some disclaimers for myself. Um, I've never run a cafe on its own. We do have like a coffee. We have a cafe area inside September Farm, so I have had involvement with that. And I helped with Shepherd's Cup until the day they opened, and then my role was finished. And so I haven't been involved with the like ongoing management of that at all. But I am passionate about the finances of business, retail, and um, yeah, learning how to run them in a profitable way. Because I that can be really challenging. A lot of without quoting any statistics, I'm sure you've all heard statistics about restaurants and how many of them are successful. how many of them last beyond like 3 to 5 years or something like that. Um, and so, yeah, I'm not sharing with 50 years of experience or anything. So I'm just sharing from the knowledge I've gleaned in, I guess, the last yeah, 10 plus years in our family's business and talking to people with other cafes or involvement with Shepherd's Cup. So I let me start sharing my screen here. I'll start here. All right, is that working well?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. My screen has the videos of you guys overlaid, but I assume you guys don't see that.
That's right. Yeah, we can
Okay.
see it well.
Okay, good. All right, I think this did not start on the first page. Here we go.
There you go.
So, I put a title to this called Busy But Broke and Why Many Cafes Fail and How to Fix It. Um, this won't fix every cafe problem, but um, hopefully it will address some issues related to profitability, and especially cafes that are busy but somehow aren't making money. Um, so I think a lot of us have probably witnessed or been to restaurants or businesses that are really, really busy. You pull in and the parking lot's full and overflowing or something like that. Um, and I've had that happens at our family's business. And it always bothers me when it in years past when we'd be really busy and people were like, oh wow, you guys must be really hitting it out of the park, right? Um, and that just because somebody's really busy does not mean that they're making a lot of money or being very profitable. And so being exposed to that made me look at businesses differently when I drive by and I see they're really busy. Usually my first thought is, oh, well, they're doing really well. But that it doesn't necessarily tell you how much money they're keeping, how well they're handling their margins and things like that. So that's what I really want to dive into today. Um, I I'll share just a quick story. Um, the other day, as I was preparing for this, one of the things I was thinking about is we're going to talk some about pricing. And related to that, so imagine a new cafe or two new cafes start up in your neighborhood, and you go to the one and they charge 25 cents more for your favorite latte than the place you normally go to, but you have a fantastic experience, great service. Um, and then you go to another place and they're charging 25 cents less than your favorite cafe, but the experience isn't great. For something like that, you're probably gonna wanna. I was hypothesizing. I was like, I think most people would pay 25 cents more for the better experience. So I posed this to my wife. I was like, so if this happened to you, what would you think? And she's like, well, she said I probably wouldn't actually notice that the price was higher. Um, so and some people would, of course. But I think that's we need to think about pricing sometimes in those ways. And we have to look at our costs and margins and what all we put into our cafe and think about, where does our pricing have to be? And just because the other cafe and are thinking from as the business owner standpoint or manager, just because the cafe down the street is charging that price doesn't mean that it's profitable for them either. So someone else's pricing isn't necessarily the benchmark. So I just share that kind of as an example or a little story going into this. So I think a couple things that are kind of core mindsets related to profitability is that we've kind of said this already, but being busy does not necessarily mean that you're profitable. Um, and it's difficult for volume to outpace poor margins. And I I have an Excel sheet here that I'll share the file with you guys later. I have it in a Google folder that I can share then. But it's basically like a the financials of a business plan. So it actually came from a project I had to do in college. We had to do like a business startup and kind of put all the details together. And so I have a really simple version of that, and I have some numbers that I set in there to try to create a realistic example for us to look at today and look at kind of a poor model first, a model of a business that's busy, but it's not being profitable. And we're going to try to fix it first by increasing volume and see what that does. And we're going to see that it has a really difficult time outpacing the poor margins. And then we're going to look at the right ways to fix it. Um, so I'll also just call out that pricing is one of the most controllable levers. We're going to look here I think on the next slide at what I think some of the control or not controllables, but some of the driving factors are related to profitability. And pricing is one of the most controllable ones. So if you think about like, okay, we want to get busier, that would really help. Well, um, you can you can do Facebook ads and you can do Facebook posts and send emails out and mailers and you can put a sign out front, but none of it guarantees that people will come in the door. I remember sometimes I remember my dad saying like he wishes he could just go stand outside the road and just like make people pull in, right? So anyway, just that as an example that we can't really control that. Um, Now there's a danger in setting prices too high, but we can change a price pretty easily. Even costs are something we can try to control, but we can't always find something that's cheaper that's the same quality. So keep that in mind that pricing it's kind of one of the scariest things to change, but it's the most controllable. At least that's what it feels like to me in my experience. And then the other mindset thing here, and we'll talk about this towards the end, is that cash flow, I think, is a little bit more important to look at than net profit. I think net profit is more important to look at than just revenue, just your total sales. But beyond net profit, it's important to watch cash flow so that you're staying sustainable and you have cash to continue keeping things running through slower times of the year and things like that. So those are the four core mindsets. So here are the levers I was talking about of profitability. So we have pricing, COGS, that stands for cost of goods sold. So um, the kind of direct costs related to the food that you're serving, the paper that you serve it on, or straws that go in the coffee drink or to-go cups, things like that. And then we have, um, I need to figure out how to move this box for myself. There we go. So we have labor, wages, taxes, benefits, things like that. Taxes related to labor, I should say. And then overhead, so the rent that we're paying for the building, insurance, equipment that we have to purchase. And then retailing, we might not think of this term as much when we're talking about a cafe as opposed to a retail store. Um, but we could think of it as uh, the effort to have really good quality food and really good service and present the food really well, and even upsells. So when they're at checkout, um, is there something there that entices them to maybe add a muffin or something like that? So sometimes we talk about like the art of retailing, where things are just laid out well and it's a good experience. And then marketing would be more driving traffic to the cafe. So those I see as the six main levers that Some of them are more controllable than others, but they're all things that we can try to make adjustments to in order to be profitable. So, for the sake of the talk today, I think it's the last two items that are on the last slide. We're going to leave those off since this talk is more directly about finances. I'm going to assume that you guys can handle having really good quality food and service, um, and that is something that's pretty well dialed in, or at least I'll leave that talk for somebody else. And then marketing as well. We're going to assume that you're doing a pretty good job. The issue isn't that you're struggling to get people in the door, to entice them in the first place. So we're going to work with those assumptions and kind of go forward from there. Um, Maybe before I continue any further, are there any questions that would clear something up before I go on? All right. So I'm going to share with you this Excel file. Um, and I'm going to click around in here a little bit as we go through this, just so that you can see what numbers I'm actually changing and you're not just seeing the end result. But this is just um, kind of a basic like business financial model. So it has capital things here. This is like all related to getting the place started. So just kind of example numbers put in there. And then this sheet here is revenue and expenses. And so we have revenue, cost of goods sold, operating costs, so that would be like our overhead things. And then an example income statement. So this income statement right here, you'll see on some of the slides. So that's where that's being pulled from on the slides. This part we're not going to really get into today, but gives you examples of forecasted cash flow for the first 3 years, assuming it's a new startup. And then what we have here is item costs. And so the revenue and expenses, where we're looking at how many units we sold and so forth, is pulling from this sheet with item costs. So we have, I put a very basic menu just to keep this simple for today. So you might have multiple different lattes and sandwiches, but we'll just say you have coffee, latte, sandwich, and bagels, and we have units sold per day. And then that multiplies to show units sold per year. And then this is showing a 5% growth year over year. And then we have cost per unit. And so I just have some figures in there. That's one of the things we're going to change these down here just so I can plug different numbers in quickly. And we have those going up by 10% each year. And then the selling price is the other variable we're going to control. So um, that's going to end up changing the numbers that we see here. The other thing that will change here is labor. We'll do a slight adjustment to that. So let's go back here to the presentation. So we're going to start out with kind of like the scenario that we don't want to be in, where we're that place that you drive by that's really busy, and they're the place that you want to go to and ask them if they can donate to your cause, and you ask them, and they're like, "Well, unfortunately, we." They feel like they don't have anything to contribute, and you're left wondering, well, why is that the case? Like you look like you're so busy, you have to be doing really well. So this is an example of a cafe that is doing over $700,000 in its first year. So it has good sales volume. So in the model here, it's a decent volume of sales. It's not like they're not getting anybody in the door. But we're going to say that their labor is not very efficient. They maybe have a little bit more labor than necessary. Maybe they're not well trained. And so there's some labor waste, and their pricing, they tried to be a little bit too fair with that, and maybe they tried to undercut the competition, or maybe there's not competition, but they just set the prices too low. And then costs are higher than necessary. So maybe there's waste with food product happening, or they just haven't found good distributors or sources to buy from at better costs. So the result you can see um, isn't great. The the revenue looks good, and it looks like they're making more and more each year. Um, and they're slowly digging out of a hole, but the net income is negative each year. So I said we're going to look at initially saying, okay, well, I think what can often happen, we get in that place and we think, oh, if we were busier, it's more exciting. It can be more exciting to work on marketing than it is to work on margins. And we can always fear, even if we are decently busy, to like, what if people stop coming? Like, we have to keep people coming. And so that usually is the fear of raising our prices is that people will stop coming. And then we're in a really bad place. Um, but if we find ourselves in the situation like we are here, where we're decently busy, and we think that the way out of the hole is to get busier, then we'll call that the volume trap. And so let's say we're in that situation and we think, okay, if we could get busier, if we could increase our traffic flow by 20%, which would be a really nice jump if you could accomplish that with great marketing. And we're going to assume that labor does go up some because you're that much busier. It's probably going to take a little bit more labor. And so we're going to have more customers coming in, but we're still losing money. So it's not as bad. So that's the first model. And here's the second model. So um, we are, I'll show you here in the Excel sheet what we changed. So this is what we started out with. And we said we wanted a 20% increase in our volume. So we changed that. And then um, our cost and pricing, we didn't change. We left that the same. And then we said there was a slight increase in labor. And so there's that $90,000. So that's where this number is coming from. So I think that that can be a common trap that we fall into, that we think we just need to be busier, and that's what the answer is to being profitable. And being busy is valuable, and we're going to look at that in just a little bit. But I would propose that the fix first is to work on the profitability, refine the model that you currently have. Um, if you're that busy, you should be able to be making money with the volume that you have. So next, we're going to instead of adjusting instead of getting a 20% increase, we're going to assume traffic flow stays the same. And we're going to raise our prices on drinks by 25 cents to 50 cents. So back to that idea of like, would you pay 25 cents more? Probably, if it's a great experience, that probably not going to be bothered by that. Would you pay a dollar or two more for the sandwich? Probably. We're going to reduce our costs by just some small amounts, and we'll put labor back down to where it was. And so let's make those adjustments, and then we'll see what that comes to. Let's see. So we're going to lower these costs just a little bit, and we're going to change these prices. Then we come back here, and now we said we're going to take our labor back down because our labor was up from when it was a busier model. And so now we're profitable. So I I find that so fascinating that You would think that a 20% increase in sales would be really beneficial. But if you're starting with a model that's not dialed in and you don't have your margins figured out,
Hmm.
it's really difficult for volume to outpace bad margins. Eventually, it could, um, and and that's a little bit more the model of like a food distributor where they work on lower margins, but they have really, really high volumes of stuff.
Right.
Um, so there's a limit to how busy a cafe can be. So it's really important that we have the margins dialed in. Um, so now we want to look at what if we get this figured out, and then now we're profitable. Now we can spend more money on marketing. What if we can do this and we can get a 20% increase in traffic flow? And we're going to see that that makes a much larger difference. So I don't think I'll bother going back to Excel, but we're going to keep those all the same, and we're going to bump the volume by 20%, and we'll assume we have a little bit more labor related to that. And now our profit went from like 37,000 or so the first year to 103,000. So the volume is a really valuable thing, but it's only as valuable as kind of the blocks that are below it. Maybe before we get into this, any questions? We'll try to save time for questions at the end here too. But any questions before we continue?
Putting the work into it, AJ, rather than just trying to, increase transactions, putting more of that work into it at the bottom side, um, will make you look a lot less tired.
Hmm.
Just frantically trying to increase that traffic to overcome your overhead, your costs. That's a really hard way to go.
Yeah, certainly. That's a great
And I,
thought.
and I wish it was as easy as you just showed us there.
To to do what? To
I
increase
wish it was
traffic
as
flow?
easy. I wish it was as easy as
Oh,
you showed us
to
there.
yeah.
Yeah, just doing
Yeah,
highlights.
this makes it look really easy. You just change
Yeah.
prices and costs and suddenly you're
Yeah.
making money.
Yeah. Yeah. But what you said there, it's actually, I mean, it's often is not as hard as we think, but we have to get past that head junk of the fear of raising our prices is that people will stop coming. Obviously there's a limit, there's a edge to this, but you know, you 25%, 25 cents more, your wife won't even notice it. It's
Hmm.
oftentimes it's not as big of a deal as we think to increase those
Hmm.
pricing. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. And I often share that with people within Extend Cafes, put those prices up. We tend to think that everyone is evaluating every penny. Hey, they're coming to your establishment because they love coming there. It's a
Hmm.
destination. And to create that destination, it takes a lot of overhead, a lot of cost beyond just the the little coffee shop around the corner that's running a robotic espresso machine.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Great thoughts.
Mhm.
Yeah, on that note, I'm glad you brought that up. We had a scenario like that where, yeah, we always fear raising our prices because we're afraid that people stop coming because of it. Um, and I will say that it is really important that quality of the food and the service stays really solid because it is true that if you go somewhere and the price goes up by 50 cents, which isn't super noticeable, but if it goes up by 50 cents and the service seems like it got worse, then you're probably done going there because the price went up and the service isn't great. But if the price goes up and you still had an amazing experience, maybe even better than the first time, um, yeah, you think, well, I'm here because they have really good food and really good service, and I like the atmosphere. And we had a scenario kind of like that we had made some price adjustments, and we were concerned that maybe it was related to, we raised our prices and people weren't okay with it. Um, and so we were looking back and looking at the sales, and we had some sales that decreased. But it was when we dug into the day by the hour, it was actually in the evening hours, and we hadn't made there wasn't price adjustment significantly there. Um, but we did know that our service had declined, our service quality. We had a lot of turnover of staff and things like that. And so we kind of uh, deduced from all that it wasn't actually pricing related, but it was more related to our service had declined a little bit, at least during that kind of season of a couple months where there was lots of new staff being trained and things like that. So
Sure. Yeah, interesting.
yeah, okay. So cash flow, we talked about this early at the beginning, um, as opposed to just looking at net profit. Um, so profit on paper. So just because it says that we had that net profit of $37,000 or whichever example you want to use, doesn't mean that we necessarily have $37,000 in the bank at the end of the year. Um, and and how I think one of the main ways that that can happen is as we pour money back into the business on capital expenditures, so large pieces of equipment or a remodel, something that is not immediately expensed. Uh, if it's not immediately expensed, it doesn't impact our net profit, but it does take our cash, assuming we don't borrow money to do it. So um, it can be it can be pretty easy to spend the cash that you have, thinking that. So back to that volume trap. So okay, we're not busy enough. We need to there's a piece of equipment that we have don't have. We need to add this so that we can start selling soft pretzels because they're really profitable. So we need an oven for that, and we need a display case, or we need this outdoor seating area because that will get more people in here. Well, if our building blocks below that aren't figured out, it's we already looked at that. It's still not going to be the fix. And now we're spending the cash, whatever cash we do have, to do those improvements and uh, and unfortunately, it won't pay off if we haven't dialed our margins in. So just to reiterate that, if the margins aren't healthy, more volume isn't going to fix it. And cash reserves are important to help you survive. Almost every place has months or seasons where they slow down a little bit. And it's not uncommon in the retail industry um, to not show a profit even for the first 3 months of the year, until things get busier. So you want to be prepared for that. So I would just say that I would make capital investments very cautiously in the early years, and make sure that your margins are established really well so that you're building on a good foundation. And then just a couple kind of practical things that I thought of to add on here at the end, somewhat related, is don't get hung up on the total sales, but focus on the profitability. So don't always be looking at not even just the net profit number, but that number above it, the total revenue. Um, Somebody can tell you that they do $1 million in sales every year, but they might have nothing left over. So don't get hung up on that number, but really focus in on the profitability. Of course, what we're talking about here is as related to uh, being profitable. Um, don't hear me wrong in saying um, that if you're running a kingdom focused cafe, that this is the absolute like paramount focus. There's obviously lots of other really important pieces of the cafe, but as it relates to it generating um, a good profit. Uh, I would not get hung up on that. And so, yeah, be meticulous with your groundwork. So if you haven't started yet, really think through your work on your costs and your pricing and be ready to make adjustments after you open if necessary. And if you already are open and um, you're in a place where you feel like you're busy, but you're not as profitable as you want to be, yeah, just go back and look at that groundwork and really refine the process, refine the details of what you're charging and what you're paying for things. Um, and then related to this is kind of straying a little bit from strictly finances, but um, I think as it relates to keeping cost of goods sold low and keeping labor efficient is if you can keep the menu simple, so that you have, fewer ingredients to manage. Maybe you can utilize the same ingredients in multiple recipes. But if you can keep it simpler, it's easier to train, so you don't spend as much money on training new staff in. Um, it's easier to replicate and deliver quality food consistently. And then just a plug for Excel or Google Sheets or whatever. Uh, it's an extremely valuable tool when it comes to crunching some numbers to figure out, if you want to add up all the ingredients going into a sandwich or something like that. And if you're not extremely familiar with Excel, um, ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or something like that, um, I know maybe some people may be opposed to using some of those services, and I respect that. Um, but I will say that for for that kind of work in particular, I found it to do really, really well. Um, there's there's a lot of stuff that I took classes on Excel and I know that it's capable of doing, but I don't remember how to do it. And it can just kind of give you a step-by-step process of, or it'll just give you the formula to plug in or something like that. And so yeah, it can be a really helpful way to analyze where things are at and help you make good decisions related to setting pricing or analyzing your costs or things like that. So Brian touched on some of this a little bit actually, but just some encouragement related to pricing. So we talked about it being the most controllable lever that we have probably, but it's also the one that we're kind of the most afraid to adjust. Um, and so yeah, remember, I'm assuming in most of your cases you're kind of a specialty cafe. You're probably not the coffee shop that's using an automated machine. I'm guessing you probably have a really attractive space that you renovated, and it's a really nice area for people to spend their time. And I'm guessing you have really excellent food and coffee. And I would assume that you probably pay your employees well too, because you valued, taking care of the employees. And so because of all those things, you really need to charge appropriately for that. So you you might need to charge more than the competition around you. But just because you're the most expensive coffee shop in the neighborhood does not mean that people won't want to come there. Um, if that's the space that you've created, then people will be coming there because of that space and because of the really good food and the experience they get there. Um, and then just recall that example we talked about at the beginning that a great experience is better than saving 25 cents for most people. And to take that point a little bit further, so imagine if you built your whole business on customers that are always after saving 25 cents or 50 cents. Um, but you're trying to have a cafe that's a really attractive space and really high quality food and you pay your employees well. It's probably not the customers that you want. It's probably not gonna really work out in the end. So So that I think concludes what I have. So
Thank you so
I'll open it
much.
up here. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you just end your sharing there,
Hmm.
AJ? Thank you. Okay, and we'll open it up for some questions here right shortly. So be thinking about that. And also, by the way, I see Sam Bear is still on here, and I thought about this as we got into this call that it's Sam's birthday today. I think it's today. I'm pretty sure that was this morning that I sent him a happy birthday message. So happy birthday, Sam. He's 40 years old, I believe. The big 40. Yeah, look at that. You're out there swinging the
Yeah,
hammer.
thanks.
Yep,
Thanks, Brian.
yep. And I told him
And
I'm praying for that this next decade to be way beyond what he can imagine, dream. That God would just give him the desires of his heart, whether it's for family, church, kingdom events, and also for Seekers Cafe, which is it's ready to go as soon as they get a space, so we can pray for that. So,
thanks, Brian. I appreciate
yep,
it.
yep, it's good to
And
see you.
thanks, AJ. Good to see you as well.
Good to see you.
Yep. Okay. Um, yeah, and where I was, one of the thoughts that I had as I was listening to you talk here is that one of the challenges that we have starting up these kind of independent or mom and pop shops, if you will, is that currently Extend Cafes doesn't have as much brand recognition as Chick-fil-A. We got a little ways to go there yet. All right. And which it's not even a model anyhow. We like to be kind of below ground, if you will, because we think in the long run, private ownership, cafes where it's your story is actually way more powerful than a franchise like Chick-fil-A. Anyhow, but when a Chick-fil-A opens up, in your town, the people are lined up. They can't wait. Okay, people know all about it. They know what to expect, and Chick-fil-A delivers it every time with a my pleasure happily on the end. And whenever Coronation Cafe starts in downtown Amherst, they have no idea. Actually, sometimes people who are leasing to us, they don't even want to talk to us because they've had so many mom and pop shops come and go. Um, that's what happened to us. I just recently had our landlord tell us that when we bought the cafe in his space and came to him and said, "Hey, we bought it, the cafe in your space. We want to do a sublease." He hung his head and gave a big sigh behind his hand, and because he's like, "Oh boy, here we go, another mom and pop shop that'll fail in a couple of years." Thankfully, we're still here today. So, what are when you're starting out, one of the challenges is if we come in as high priced, people won't come. Um, but do you have any words of advice for that? Have you thought about that? What are some ways to kind of overcome sticker shock, possibly? Do we just need to bite the bullet and say, for the first couple months, we're just gonna try to, you know, break even? It's a big question. I'm just kind of putting out here to see if you have thought of that at all, AJ, or have any input for that challenge.
Yeah, that's a really fair question. Um, One thing that comes to mind is so you could decide, well, let's set our prices lower to attract people. Um, but if you're setting them so low that it's not actually sustainable long term, then you're going to have to put them up. Um, and uh, that's not fun to do.
Hmm.
Um, and you're kind of doing like almost like bait and switch um, to pull people in. And yeah, you would have to decide how long are you going to do that for. You can just do that for a month or something like that. And I think there are maybe some appropriate ways to do that where you advertise like introductory pricing or something like that. Or maybe you take one or two items from your menu and you say, we have, you know, introductory pricing on this or grand
Hmm.
opening pricing on these two items. Um, but uh, yeah, if you won't, you have to set your prices where you can be sustainable long term. And if you're afraid that that's not going to work in your market, um, then it might not work in your market. Like, uh, if that's actually the truth, then don't try to start. Chances are it's not. You're probably just um, nervous about that.
Hmm.
But I think one other thought on that is that um, who you are when they first visit you. First of all, they don't know your prices until they come, unless they look you up online. Um, and you're kind of setting the stage for who you are when they arrive. And so that means you're going to set your stage as a cafe that, maybe is a little bit higher priced than the competition, but the food is amazing and the service and the people there are fantastic and it's a really neat atmosphere. Um, and uh, if that's who you have to be long term to be sustainable, then you might as well start out that way. And that's who you are, and people can can be familiar with that from day one.
Sure. Yeah, I thought of the quote, "What you win them by is what you win them to."
There you go.
And so that I think we could apply here. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Good stuff. All right. Any questions for AJ? Make them quick.
I don't have a question necessarily, but thank you for sharing, and I found that super helpful. And we're a few years in, and I think through Bryant and different ones have learned some of these things and have had to apply them. But it makes a lot of sense. And I think something that I had to learn is just in this type of an industry, it was a little different than what I was used to, and just how big of a deal it is to make 25 cents more on your lattes, just like the
Yeah,
example you had. And that was a bit of a new thought for me in this industry. So yeah, and then I've recently been working on some spreadsheets as well, and so I'm grateful for that encouragement because I see how powerful that is. So thank you. This has been super helpful.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, AJ, for your talk. Really enjoyed that. Joe Kurtz here from Coronation Cafe. We've been going for about 3.5 years, and we lost money the first couple of years. And I guess I'm wondering how long people should think in terms of losing money. But we are the third year into it, and thank God we'll looks like we'll make a profit in this year. And we have done price increases several times since we opened. And and I would say that, when you spoke about volume and how volume doesn't, it's hard to, if your margins are bad, your margins are bad, it's going to be hard to fix it with volume. But when we opened up, there's a sense where I knew that that was the problem. Like we had to increase volume because we started
Hmm.
kind of slowly. And so I knew that. So there's a sense where we had to get some run time to start to get reliable numbers, and even in terms of to rein in our labor costs. So, but once a business, and so here's the question: once a business is operating, like say in the third year or fourth year, and the margins are reined in, like labor was out of control for us because we wanted to be prepared to handle a rush, right? So you're staffing
Hmm.
well, but labor is 50%, and you know you're not going to make money. But now you're running 3 years, you have enough sales to generate a profit. Where should your labor come in at? That's the one question as a percentage. And and also maybe net profit. What would be, I looked at the numbers you threw up there, and I think on the third year it was about a 10 to 12% net profit. What are your suggestions in terms of labor percentage, net profit percentage, cost of goods sold percentage? Um, no, that's three questions at you.
Hmm. Yeah, great observations. And I'll admit too, like what I shared is kind of like an idealistic scenario, right? It doesn't demonstrate the bumps and curves, and like you're saying, wanting to be staffed up and ready for busy seasons or a busy time of the day or something like that. And it's also true that on going one direction, volume isn't going to outpace bad margins, but kind of looking at it the other direction, you do need enough volume.
Mhm.
Really good margins also can't outpace volume that's not there at all. So you make a great point from that perspective. Um, so it's important that we need at least, a certain amount of volume that the margins have to work with.
Mhm.
To your questions, so you're asking about kind of benchmarks for labor as a percentage of total sales. I don't really speak
Mhm.
as an expert on this, but um, what I usually hear in conversations is um, 30%, um, maybe up to 40%, something like that, depending on kind of how your business is set up. Um, but that's often talked about in the restaurant industry where, uh, maybe 30% is your cost, or a third is your cost, a third is labor, and the other third is your gross um, gross profit, and then overhead comes off of that. So then what that leaves you with, yeah, I would say to be in that like 10 to 12% range um, is maybe kind of a benchmark. I know there's companies that can do a lot better than that. Um, but I would say that that's a pretty standard solid return. If you're less than 10% or less than 8%, then um, yeah, you could be doing $1 million a year and you're only walking away with 80,000 is starting to get kind of thin.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that was two of your questions. Was there a third one that I
No, no, you
didn't answer
answered
it?
it.
Okay.
I do have one more, and that's just real quick. When you think about, you spoke about cash reserves. I mean, in a cafe type business, what do you think is a reasonable amount of cash reserves? So you got to keep 100,000 in your checking account, or 1 month's expenses, or half a year's expenses, or we're in a college town, and so our sales are driven somewhat just like Sowers and some of these others by the academic year a little bit. So when the students come, those are your busy months: October, November, September, October, November, strong months. Tails off a little bit end of the year, not terribly. Students come back beginning of the year, it's strong again: February, March, April, May. May is going to be another peak, and then the summer it slumps off just a little bit. And those cycles are pretty, they're pretty predictable. I'm just curious if you have an opinion, or what's good business practice.
I'm guessing maybe Bryant and some of the others here have some input on this from a cafe's perspective specifically. I know for us, it can be hard to turn a profit months one, two, and three of the year, just the nature of our business. And so um, I would say that would be one way to think about it is if you have months that you're not,
Mm,
that you just can't really turn a profit because, and that would be not because your margins are bad, but because volume just dips too low over those times. Um, then looking at what reserves you need to get through that without having to use a line of credit. Um, and line of credits can be helpful in those times too. But I would say that would be one thought I have on kind of what would be ideal. But maybe others have advice beyond that.
thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Joe, for those questions. Good stuff. Any other questions for AJ? We should be wrapping this up here within the next 10 minutes for sure.
I'll say one more thing to you, Joe. I know in the like model I gave, like I said, it's kind of an idealistic scenario. So uh, for someone to be profitable in the first year, I think would be probably abnormal, even though that's kind of what that example maybe was not perfectly realistic. So it sounds like you guys are on the right track. If you're in year three or four and you're starting to turn the corner, then I would say you guys are doing well. That's really good.
Yeah, Coronation Cafe, once the word got out, they hung on, and now they're. I think I heard, Joe, that the other Saturday you had your biggest Saturday ever, right? So you keep breaking
Oh yeah.
records there.
Yeah, we just broke our record. This past Saturday was the busiest Saturday we ever had. And we might have another one of those this Saturday. We shall see.
Okay. Yeah, very well. Okay, I'll just pause just for a little bit. Any more questions? AJ, you can be thinking about this. I'd love if you could tell us any resources or books that you recommend, kind of when it comes to, um, financial literacy for cafes, best practices, just straight up, obviously, across the board, financials. Any books, blogs, podcasts, etc. But yeah, any more questions for him? All right. Yeah, would you have a response to that, AJ?
Yeah, I don't know that I can recommend any books. I'm not an avid reader. I do about a
Hmm.
book a month, but I haven't been doing books that are related to finances. Um, I one kind of business leadership podcast that I listened to that are not specifically related to finances, but I found valuable was uh, I forget the name of it, but it's Patrick Lencioni, the group that he's with.
Yeah.
I found some of that valuable just as it relates to team culture and relating with your team and having your team function well.
Yeah, that's good. I recently had somebody talking with me about that as well, um, who had their team do the test around the six working geniuses that Patrick recommends. I think his podcast is called The Table Group or something like that.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
see
right.
Jerry L, you're not in your head. Yeah, definitely top shelf stuff there.
Yeah, I'll say taking the test for myself, and that was actually really valuable to help me see like uh, where my uh, like strong points are and being able to focus more on those, and
Hmm.
then also knowing what my weaknesses are on the team. So it was personally more valuable than anything. So yeah, I'm not somebody that usually likes those personality tests. Like for some
Yeah.
reason, DISC doesn't resonate with me very well. But his is a very different style, and everybody comes out as a genius of some sort. So
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Good. Okay. All right. Any other recommendations here from the ones attending the call of good financial resources?
Oh yeah, there's that great little book called is it Accounting Made Simple or Accounting from a Lemonade Stand, maybe?
Okay, which
Um,
I think we actually have that on a resources page here, right?
yeah, I wish I had it here to
Uh,
show you guys, but Accounting from a Lemonade Stand, I think it's called, and really simplistic but good. Built, anyway, that might be something worthwhile checking into.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would second that about the lemonade stand. One podcast might not have as much to do. I mean, it would probably touch on it in some episodes because there's a lot of guests. Restaurants Unstoppable. I found
Hmm.
that to be a extremely helpful podcast.
Nice. Thank you, Sam. Restaurants Unstoppable. That's awesome. We'll try to put that into the show notes here. And also, I see, AJ, that you sent me the link to that spreadsheet, right? We'll try to get that
yeah, there's
attached
a Google
as
folder
well.
with the
Yeah.
in there. Yep.
Great. Fantastic. Okay. AJ, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing with us today. I really appreciate that labor of love here for us. So I know that you put a good bit of time into this, and so thank you so much. And if you ever get to Sowers, I'll be happy to serve you a meal on us here at least. So,
Yeah,
and
thank
of
you.
course, Old Market Cafe, Jerry O, Coronation Cafe, um, Brian Martin. Is it Common Ground? Well, boy, I was I was pulling a blank here just a minute ago on your rec cafe there.
It's Gathering Grounds.
Gathering Grounds. Yes.
Yes.
Missouri. Never
Yeah.
been
Thanks
there,
for
but
letting me join here today.
you're
It's
good.
been great.
Good
Yeah.
stuff.
So if you guys come in Albania, we have Braho, Semi Braho's Cafe. For now,
Yeah.
we haven't opened yet, but we
Okay.
can make you a good coffee
Yes.
in our home.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I can't wait to do that, Samir.
Yeah.
Can't wait. So thank you for being on here, away from that part of the world. So
Thank
and
you.
our goal, our big vision with Extend Cafes is a global network of Kingdom Cafes, and we're looking forward to partnering with you there. So yeah, we hope to be back together here on this podcast probably in February. We typically do the second month of the quarter, I believe, like the second Thursday, I think. But we are kind of hoping to increase some of these podcasts. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. Also, for your calendars, we are planning currently our Extend Conference, which is an annual conference. It'll be happening here in State College again this year. You can see it on our website. We got some information there. We talk a little about what happens there. And that is going to be Wednesday, March 11th, 2026, Lord willing. Also, this coming week, we have our first Coffee Bar Academy happening. That'll be happening here again in State College. Jerry L is going to be here. Also, Nevin Atkinson, who works at Sowers part-time and also with Extend. They've been working hard at the content for this. Really excited. We have about 10 to 12 students coming to that. And that'll be Monday evening through Thursday afternoon. A lot of really good stuff around coffee science. Everything has to do with running a coffee bar, from training and inspiring your team to how to run the espresso machine and all about coffee. And we hope to do this again next year. But if you're those that are on here, if you're inspired to come, AJ, if you have anybody in your coffee bar there that you want trained, send them on out here. Or Brian, grab a plane ticket, fly in, or send your main barista manager in. We'll take good care of them. So, all right. Again, thanks for joining today. And this talk will be on YouTube at Extend Cafes. Thanks for joining at today. So have a good day. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Goodbye.